Good afternoon, Rhett Powers. How are you?
I'm good, CB Bowman. How are you?
I'm great. So we're going to try this again. This is really exciting. First of all, welcome to Challenges of the C-Suite. I'm super excited to have you back again.
Well, hey, it's good to be back again, and I'm honored that you'd have me back.
Of course. You have become my mentor to success.
Oh, give me a break.
Oh, I love watching you blush.
Oh, that's funny.
Hey, Rhett, we had some feedback from the first edition that we did, which was just basically a teaser. And so there were things that you spoke about that I think are critical for entrepreneurs to confront and to manage through. So in talking about the challenges of the C-suite, we want to talk about the real stuff, not the panacea that everybody makes entrepreneurship to be. And one of the things that you mentioned very wisely is knowing when to have grit. What is grit?
Well, I think that's a little, probably means a little different, something different to every person. I know for me, I didn't really understand grit until I had a company, and my first company, and we had a 636-page business plan, and that got thrown out the window on day, or actually not even day one or day two. It happened like in the second hour that we were owners of the company. And it's that determination not
Wait,
to quit.
Why did you have it thrown out the window?
Well, disaster after disaster. So we walked in. I was very proud. I think we had a beer that first afternoon to sort of christen our new venture. A couple hours later, in the middle of the night, the pipes burst in the office and flooded out two other adjoining businesses. So dealing with insurance and angry shop owner, angry warehouse owners who had lost inventory and their ability to do their business did not make us look favorably upon by our neighbors. And then, the second or third day, I went into our biggest customer, and I didn't even cross the threshold of the business or the door. And he said, "You're that new guy." And he just started yelling at me and laying into me about my prices. And like, they're not even my prices. I don't know what you're talking about, And so just everything seemed to go out the window the minute we got the keys to the business, and everything seemed to go wrong. Just like it's like getting that warranty that expires, and then your washing machine crashes or your water heater bursts the next day, right? It was kind of like that, right? I had in the first week, we were trying to hire some delivery drivers. I literally went through 9 people that didn't show up the next day after we hired them. I'd hire one, they wouldn't show up. I'd have to go make the deliveries. I'd put another ad out. I'd get another round. I'd say, "God, I like that kid." He'd come in, do the interview. I'd say, "You're hired. Come the next day." Didn't show.
Oh no.
So it was one thing after another that was just this sort of continual thing. And what I learned, really, you asked a question about grit. I think that's what grit is. It's like that. It's that getting out of bed every day, sort of reigniting that spirit inside you to go attack the day and to go, get through the day and do it with a smile. It's that never quit when things aren't going well. It's that determination to keep going and to get in that truck when you just got back from another round of deliveries, and to go make another round of deliveries and not quit, right? And so I think that's what that is. It's that determination that you're gonna win, and that you're gonna survive, and that you're gonna succeed.
Why do you think some people have this grit and others don't?
I think if I knew the answer to that, I'd be in the billionaires club. I, it's kind of like the question of whether are you born an entrepreneur, or do you learn it? I think obviously some of it is innate, right? I think some of it is just your character and your personality, and I think that plays a big part. I know that my parents instilled in me this sort of work ethic and determination not to quit. I had coaches that drilled into me, winners never win, and no, winners never quit, and quitters never win. So I think just that sort of way I was brought up, and that I was an athlete, and so there's that competitive nature that I think helps, and understanding that you got to put in the hours and the work in order that when you get on the field, you're ready to play. And I think that's all part of it. It's maybe some of it is confidence. Maybe you're on the right path, and you're in the right place, and you're where you're supposed to be, and that gives you the confidence to get through some of the tough stuff. I think the people that give up probably deep down inside know that they're not in the right space, they're not in the right business, they're not in the right thing, and so it's easy to sort of throw in the towel. But it doesn't mean that when they find that right thing that they don't have that same determination and grit to carry on, right, and to do. So I think maybe that's some of it. I don't know if that's a great answer, but I think there's a lot to that question.
Do you think grit can be learned, or can you be coached to have grit, or is it just something you're born
I think
with?
so. I think going back to what I was talking about, I think that some of it's confidence, right? When you know your stuff, and your subject matter, your business, and it's a matter of time before you get that break. I think what we had in our toy company was, we had our first product. We had only one product when we started, but we knew the demand for that product. We knew we had seen time and time and time again at a trade show or something where the kids were just lined up for the product, 6 deep the whole weekend, and so we knew that we had a product that kids would like. We knew that the product needed to be in the toy industry. We knew that it needed to be in toy stores. We knew that once kids saw it on a toy store shelf, that they would do the same thing that they had done for us in person, which is, want it really bad. And we had seen that reaction time and time again. So I think that played a big part in our willingness to just not give up until we got that break. And I think, so yeah, I think to an extent it can be taught. I think it can be learned, and I think it comes with confidence and experience. I mean, I don't know a business owner that goes into their first business, at least I haven't met one, that is, maybe they're confident, but there's a huge learning curve.
Oh, yes.
And I know that problem with the flood, or the problem with the guy yelling at me the first day I walked into his office, and I'd owned the business for 2 days. By year 2, it's like, that's not a big deal. That's fixable. Like that, year 3 and 4 and 5, not even a second thought, like no stress at all. So yeah, I think it can be taught. I think it can be learned.
Did you have good mentors to help you?
We had the wrong mentors to begin with.
The wrong mentor.
Well, we had grandiose visions. We had, we had this sign over our door that said, "Be significant." And to this very day, any business that I go into, that sign's coming with me, and it, because what we wanted was, we did not want to be, our staff, our team, ourselves, get into this mindset that we were going to be small. We were going to be a small toy company, a small player, a a one or two product company that comes and goes. We wanted to make our dent in the industry, and so a lot of the business mentors that we had early on, great people, and I'm not talking about them as people, and actually them as mentors for a certain type of business, or for for the corner print shop, or I mean, and in those instances, I think they would be great. But we didn't see eye to eye on our vision. We didn't see eye to eye on where we could go and how we could make this a global company. These guys were small business owners, and I'm not slamming on small business at all. It's just, we had these thoughts of, how do we open up China, and how do we do this, and how do we get into Japan, and how do we open up South America, and it wasn't where their head was at. They were great for getting started, but when we started growing and scaling and getting national clients and growing and having to hire 100 people in a month, that's a different, we just needed a different mindset. And sometimes I think that's okay, because I think that there is, we had consultants that I remember we had a consultant that was in the toy business, and he looked at us quite often and said, well, that's not how you do things. You need to do it this way. And that relationship didn't last very long, because we didn't really care how we were supposed to do things. We wanted to do things the way we thought were going to make us become the company we wanted to be. So, you have to find people that get you and get where you want to go, and see some of that vision that you see. And I think that's okay to just sort of experiment with that, and to try mentors, and to see if there's a fit.
So basically, and let's just take a moment now, what we're talking about, and we're talking to Rhett Power about the wildly successful toy company that he created, CEO of, called Wild Creations. And so, Rhett, I just want to take a break right now and tell our audience that this podcast is being brought to you by the Association of Corporate Executive Coaches, and acronym ACEC. And it's a special association of corporate executive coaches that embraces and supports master level corporate executive coaches in being enterprise-wide business partners. Let's go back to Rhett now. Rhett,
and say, if you'd have been around when I had my business, I wouldn't have had to have mentors that didn't get us.
I love that. Thank you. And we didn't even pay you for that endorsement.
It's a fact. It's true.
Thank you. Thank you. So, summarizing what we just learned, it's not a problem to have more than one mentor. And you have to recognize that a mentor is for a moment in time. So don't be afraid to change mentors, respectfully do it, and to continue to grow. And it's also real important to have grit. So, Rhett, let's talk about something else that you mentioned, and that was knowing when to get out of your own way. I remember when I was, it was a couple of years ago in the Association of Corporate Executive Coaches, I was told by my advisory committee, CB, you're getting in the way. And I was so upset because this was my baby. And I thought, how is it that they don't want me anymore? And I really acted out like a stubborn child. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to help them. They're just going to fall on the sword. And they'll call me. And guess what? They didn't fall on the sword. And I survived. And I went on to do things that I should be doing. I went on to focus on the strategy of the business. I went on to lead the business. But it was a real reality check that once you grow something from your baby, you have to move to a different role at a certain point. You have to hand over part of the reins to the people who can make your vision even greater. So tell us about your experience of getting out of your own way.
Well, I can say that you just summed it up really nicely. U2 came out with a song about a year ago called "Get Out of Your Own Way," and it's one of my sort of favorite songs. And I think it just reminds me of that time. But what I mean by that, and when we talked about it, was it's very easy and very normal to not want to give up that control. And for those of us who are entrepreneurs, CB, you know this well, and I've experienced it. You want to be involved in all of those decisions. You want to be involved in this problems. I used to have what I thought was a good management strategy at the time, which was an open door. And, I would have a game plan. I would have my calendar right here, which I still to this day write out. And I would have my day planned, and I would get in at 7, and I'd start on my list. And lo and behold, I'd look up, and it was 6 o'clock in the evening, and I hadn't done a darn thing on my list. And it was because all day long I was involved in some, Joe's problem on the production line, or Paul's problem with the van, and this and that. And I was solving all the problems, and that just wasn't sustainable. It wasn't sustainable. What we realized, what Peter, my business partner, and I realized was the fact that we were doing that all the time, every day, 5-6 days a week, was we weren't enabling anybody. We weren't empowering anybody. When the customer service person would come and say, "This is my problem, can you talk to this customer?" I wasn't helping her or him grow. I wasn't empowering. I can't speak English. I wasn't allowing them to grow professionally. I wasn't allowing them to have ownership of the position. Why is the customer service manager coming to me? They have a manager title. They should have some leeway to make a decision and make a call. And I came to a point where I was just so bogged down, and the business wasn't growing like it should, because I wasn't focused on, and my partner wasn't focused on the strategic things, the things that we needed to do to grow the business. And that was a hard reality to come to. It was not an easy reality to say, "Joe, I love you to death, man, but you got to go figure out your own problem on the production line. Sarah, you got to figure out your customer service issue, because I can't spend the next 40 minutes talking to this customer. Could I solve the problem? Yeah, I could solve the problem, but I don't need to solve the problem." And that was a hard sort of mental shift and shift to make in the business. But when we made it, and we were forced to make it, it wasn't like I came to this realization on my own, because I'm not that smart. But or that self-aware. But we were forced to do it because we grew so fast, and people had to start figuring stuff out on their own, and it just sort of happened. And we had people that had been there long enough that we said, "Look, guys, you guys take control of this, and if you have something massive, if the water main breaks again, yeah, I probably need to be involved in that. But if your UPS guy's got a problem, fix it, and you have the power to fix it, right?" And so I can pay attention to the top lines. I can pay attention to the P&Ls. I can make the strategic relationships, because at that time I needed to be camped out at Toys R Us in New Jersey, and so there and down in Arkansas and in Hong Kong. So I didn't have time anymore to be involved in that little in the stuff. So I think that that's what I mean by get out of your own way. And the sooner you can do that, the sooner you empower your people, to make decisions and to, you have to have parameters and rules and such, but, give them that leeway. And then I think what you see in the business is that transformation that happens when people have ownership and they know that you're going to support their decisions in their calls, whether they're right or wrong sometimes. And when you can do that, man, you can just see this just tremendous transformation in the business and people really buying into at that point what you're doing, and they feel some ownership of it. And that was sort of a side effect. Now that I know that, and I understand that, and I've seen that transformation, it makes me a better leader. And I think anything I do, kind of going forward, that's a lesson learned that will stick with me, and that I will try to do a whole lot sooner than I did before.
That's fantastic. I love the story. So let's see, what else will I ask you? Well, first, let me take another break and mention that this is being brought to you by the Association of Corporate Executive Coaches. And our focus is on master level corporate executive coaches becoming business-wide, enterprise-wide business partners. And that just means focusing not only on your client, but the environment in which the client resides, his entire or her entire organization. Rhett, one of the other powerful things that you talked about was knowing when to stop and knowing when to go forward. It reminds me of that old, I think it's a Kenny Rogers song, Knowing When to Fold. And we're not talking about closing down the organization, but it's knowing when to stop, think, or stop, drop, and roll from taking yourself out of fire. Maybe it's more related to that. So tell us about your experience.
I think I have no idea what I was talking about in that in that instance, but I get it. Like that makes that makes a lot of sense to me, because you do have to learn. One of the things that I think what I was probably referring to is sort of some of my self-management, and I've got the worst case of ADD in the world, and so again, that's why the open door policy was such a bad thing for me, because I'd go down some rabbit hole and sit with a graphic designer for 4 hours looking at a nice pretty design that he was working on for a box. Didn't need to be doing that. It was fascinating, but I didn't need to be doing that. So I've come up with tools to sort of stop myself from going down those rabbit holes. I used to leave the office every Wednesday, and that was my time to stop, think, get out of the office, go to a coffee shop. Amazingly, I could sit in a coffee shop and not be distracted and get more work done than I can in the office. I don't know why.
Possible.
I don't know why, but it's true. And because I guess I'm not curious about what's happening over there with the barista as much as I'm curious about what's happening over there on my production line. But anyway, so for me, it's about slowing down so that you can be strategic. It's about slowing down and stopping and thinking, because what I saw time and time again in the business, when we were spinning and going down the road at 80 miles an hour trying to change the tire, we would spin our wheels and we would not get very far, and we would make bad decisions and we would make rush decisions. And when we slowed down and we took our time and we thought about things, we had more people in the decision-making process, then we made better products, we made better product decisions, we made better business decisions. And so that slowing down, it was and that stopping and learning to say no. Sometimes I hate to sort of talk about the negative, and I don't see no as a negative in a lot of ways, because it saves you from. To me, it's a smart thing to learn how to say no. So it's a smart thing to learn how to put limits, because if you don't say no, you blow your budget. If you don't say no, you order too much product, or you can make some pretty big decisions or mistakes if you don't learn to say that word. So I look at it as a positive. So that's what I meant by that, is slowing down and stopping. And I had to leave the office every week on a Wednesday to stop, to slow down, to get my head around what I didn't get done on Monday and Tuesday that I really, really need to get done. What strategic things do I need to think about? What do I have coming up in the next 2 days that I really have to focus on? What are some of those hard calls I put off on Monday and Tuesday? Those hard emails, those hard, the calling and asking for money or a payment, or calling somebody early on in the business and saying, I can't pay you this month. Can I get 30 more days? So, you face those every day as a business owner, and so I had to learn, sort of the hard way that that I needed to do that.
So I think that's exactly what we were talking about. And before we go on to talking about your new venture, which I'm going to surprise you and ask you about.
Wow, awesome.
I'm going to ask you two questions. With the toy company, what was the worst decision? What was the worst thing that happened to you? And what was the best thing that happened to you?
Wow, that's fantastic. I think the worst experience was trying to hire. I think we had to have 100. I think we had to have 100 positions. We had to hire in like a month to fulfill the orders and to get things done. That was awful. I never want to do that again.
What was bad about it?
Oh, it was just a nightmare. I mean, we weren't ready for that. We didn't have the systems in place, the HR systems for that. We didn't have an onboarding process to handle that. We didn't, how in the world do you go from like 6 people to 106 people in a month? We just didn't have any infrastructure for that at all. Didn't have, but we had to have it. We had to have the people and the bodies to do it because we were scaling up massively. And I may be exaggerating that. I mean, it may have been like 50 one month and 50 the next month, but it was I can't remember exactly what that was, but it was just completely overwhelming. That was hard. And then we made some major, we had some product successes early on. And then as we started to grow our products, we had a bunch of inventory. There's probably some of that inventory sitting in somebody's storage unit somewhere now. We had some product that we over ordered, and so we had inventory issues and stocking issues and things like that we finally ended up building processes for and getting our inventory stuff under control. But we made a bunch of inventory mistakes early on that were probably hundreds of thousands of dollars of mistakes. We had people we gave credit to for too long, that we got burned on. But again, those are all things that I'd love to come back. I'd love to have that couple $100,000 back. But at the same time, we learned some valuable lessons, and it is what it is. And, you don't dwell on it too long. But we made some of those. The best moment was that first product that when we bought the company, is the product we fell in love with. That became one of the toys of the year, and sitting up.
What was it?
It was a little eco aquarium, a little science thing, a toy, and sitting next to the sort of the Oscars of the toy industry. And I was sitting next to John Lasseter from, who created Toy Story and, of Disney fame, and sort of sitting there with some of the giants, the Mattels and the Hasbros of the world was really remarkable. And, and having, our product be there and be in that, in that sort of space. So that was exciting. That was a very, very memorable moment. But there were a lot of them. There were a lot of, you know, lunches with the staff. We did potlucks every month. You know, I mean, there were a lot of great moments early on, and that I'll always remember. You know, and not just the big victories, the press, you know, the sales victories, but those moments where you grew. You know, I remember the title of our Pete and my business partners and I's first book, which is called 1 Million Frogs. That came out of our one of our early meetings with our team, and said, you know, we want to sell. We wrote on the whiteboard, we're going to sell 1 million frogs, which was the aquarium was a science thing, and so that was our goal. That was our only goal. And whatever we had to do that, you know, we blew that out of the water. I mean, we sold millions and millions of them, but that was our goal, and it was something everybody could get their head around. Although they laughed me out of the room when I wrote it up on the whiteboard, it's in my mind, it crystallized what we were going to try to do. And so you just remember some of those kind of growth moments, right? And some of those sort of not the big sales moments, not the big check, you know, from Toys R Us. I don't even remember what that check from Toys R Us was, but I remember, you know, John's barbecue, and I remember Lola's banana pudding, and I'll remember that for the rest of my life, because we had great potluck lunches, you know. So
Yes.
And those moments seem to, you know, stick with you in that way.
Yeah. Okay. I get it. I understand. It's the moments that touched your heart. So,
Yeah.
And you know what? It sounds like your toy was the first of the, what we call now STEM toys. So you led the market.
I don't know if Peter would agree with you, but probably, yes. I think, you know, we were a science and nature toy company. We had a remote control snake, which is our next product, and we had a remote control bird, and we had some really fun products. So.
And so, Rhett, now you're on to Courageous Leadership.
Yes.
And I think that's just such a wonderful name, and it is so important that our leaders have courage now, because they're facing so much and so fast than ever before. So talk to us about, what are you doing in that space? Can you reveal?
Well, I can't reveal, but I will say this. The website's going to be launched here pretty soon. But the real essence of and what we want to try to accomplish is, you know, a lot of companies right now are struggling with the transition, with the pandemic, with the racial injustice and the issues that we're dealing with there. And what we want to accomplish at Courageous Leadership is, you know, we want to take you back to that day one. And I talked about it earlier in the interview, where I remember the day that we got the keys to the business. And I remember that feeling. I also remember the feeling in year 10, when we have policies and procedures for everything. We have, you know, rules and regulations, and we have a culture that we have our culture already. You know, there's a culture around the company. And what we want leaders to be able to do is go back to that day one. Because in that day one, the sky's the limit. And you don't have any rules and regulations. You don't have a way we do things. There is nothing but the product or the service, and how am I going to get that product or service to the customer? And you're willing to think about any way, anyhow, you know, and there's an excitement and there's an energy around how I'm going to do that. And that's when you're most courageous, right? When you're in that day one mentality, you don't have any preconceived notions, or you don't have any, I don't want to say you don't have any rules. You have your morals and your ethics, and you have your what's right and wrong. But other than that, everything's on the table.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's really the essence of what we want to do at Courageous Leadership, is get companies back in that mindset of day one, and thinking like a day one company.
No, I often wonder what stops a company from being courageous. I always said when I started the Association of Corporate Executive Coaches, people said to me, "Stop changing so much. We can't process it. We can't keep up. Why do you do this? What's your MO for this?" And I've developed this phrase that I say to people: "Look, in order to play in my space, you have to learn how to jump first and then figure out where you're going to land. And then don't be afraid to change the landing pad." And they suddenly, I see those that get it, I see this grin come over their face. And I say, we are not like other associations. We want to be able to turn on the dime, because guess what? Life and coaching turns on a dime. So that's going to be our motto. Let's just go for it and jump. And we have done such incredible pivoting. We've grown so much. We've learned. I say to people, I don't own this association. You own it. So make it what you want it to be, believe it. And it has been wonderful. It's been a wonderful journey. So I'm really looking forward to your Courageous Leadership program. I think that the organizations that started 10, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, even Google, Lyft, Uber, all those organizations were so disruptive that they created an incredible journey for employees that was so positive.
Yeah.
So inviting. It was like, it reminds me of the days when I went to the New School. And we're at the New School, we learned that the answer is only the beginning of the question. And these organizations, it simplifies that, right? And it's an interesting correlation. As the CEO gets older, the organization moves into the classic model of your father's or mother's corporation. And that's not what got them there, not at all. So they have to learn how to go back and be courageous and step out of the mainstream and be successful. So
nobody starts out. You don't start your company by sort of. I mean, everybody starts out with this courageous sort of goal, right? This courageous action. It takes guts to start a company. It takes guts to make that leap, And you're absolutely right, like that. But what happens to us? What happens to us along the way is what kills us, right?
Yeah.
It's not. It's that early attitude is what makes us sort of grow and I mean, so if we can all get back to that early space, I mean, that's where you got to work from. That's where you operate from. That's where you grow.
I think it's leaders get scared to go back, because we remember the struggle. We remember the pain. I remember when I had the idea of opening ACEC, and I thought, this is naive. I called a company, an organization that was an association in another part of the world, I won't say where. And I talked to this woman. I said, "Oh, I'm excited. I came up with this idea, and this is what I want to do." And it was a competitor. And I thought, well, we'll all play nice together. She's in another part of the world. And this was Coach. And I will never forget, she said to me, "This won't work. One, because you're on my territory." I'm thinking, you're in another part of the world. And she said, "I don't think you should do this. It's just not going to work for you." And I remember just in tears, because I thought it was such a good idea. And at the end of the conversation, as a coach, she said to me, "I hope that I've been helpful." And that was the beginning of my guts, because I said to her, as a coach, you've been disruptive. You've destroyed what you think is my dream. and actually you've encouraged me to go forward. So yes and no, you have been helpful. And I moved forward because I thought nobody's going to kill my dream. But going back to those days is painful, right?
Oh,
but that's
well,
when
right. It's getting out of that. It's going back to that. It's getting out of your comfort zone again, and going back to those days where you're living on that edge, and you're living, every decision is a massive decision.
yes,
and you're often making it with, impartial, in incomplete information. And but like you said, I mean, that's where the real growth and the real determination comes, right? Because what she told you inspired you. It hurt you,
yes,
but it lit a fire in a way that maybe nothing else would have, right?
yes, exactly. And I will add to your advice, your wonderful advice that you gave. When you're doing something as an entrepreneur, it can be a very lonely road. So identify early adopters, identify an advisory committee that will hold your feet to the fire, so that when that self-sabotage starts, you've got somebody that you're accountable to, and you'll be inspired to continue, because you've got to show up. They have volunteered their time. You have to show up. Yeah. That's my best advice.
Well, somebody that can kick you in the pants every once in a while.
Exactly. It's a nice way to put it. Thank you so much for being part of this program. Thank you so much for sharing your success story, giving us words of wisdom, giving us encouragement to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, CB.
And this has been Challenges of the C-Suite, brought to you by CB Bowman. Go with strength and go with intent. Bye now.